If you think you've had a rough day, imagine this. Every morning you wake up in the same cold, gray underworld. There's a hill, there's a massive boulder at your feet. You push it up sweat, strain, breath by breath, and just as you're about to reach the top, it slips away, rolling all the way back down, and you start again, forever. This isn't a punishment from a bad boss or a cruel twist of fate, it's the eternal sentence of Sisyphus, one of the most cunning men in Greek mythology. His story isn't just about defying gods, it's about what happens when human pride dares to challenge the universe itself. So, grab your coffee, sit back, and let's dive into one of the most fascinating, ironic, and strangely human myths ever told. Long before Greece was filled with temples and legends, there was a shining city called Ephyra, known today as Corinth. Its first king was Sisyphus, a man so clever that even the gods themselves took notice. He ruled with wit and strategy. Under his reign, Ephyra became rich, vibrant, and admired. But Sisyphus wasn't just smart, he was dangerously smart. He believed his intelligence made him untouchable, even by the gods. And as every Greek story goes, that's where things start to go wrong. You see, in ancient Greece, hospitality was sacred. Welcoming guests, treating strangers with respect, it was a divine law, but Sisyphus broke it over and over again. He killed travelers who came seeking shelter just to prove he could. He seduced his own niece, flaunted his arrogance, and treated sacred rules as if they were a game. The gods watched, and they waited. One day, Zeus, the king of the gods, fell for a beautiful nymph named Aegina. As usual, he didn't ask permission. Transforming into a massive eagle, he swooped down and carried her away. But someone saw him. From his palace in Ephyra, Sisyphus watched the abduction unfold. And he smiled not out of fear, but out of opportunity. Days later, Aegina's father, the river god Sisyphus, came searching desperately for his missing daughter. He stopped by Ephyra, hoping the clever king might know something. "Oh, I know where she is," Sisyphus said, "but what's in it for me?" In exchange for information, he demanded that Sisyphus make a spring of fresh water flow in Ephyra, an eternal gift for his city. Deal done, Sisyphus pointed the river god toward Zeus's hiding place. You can imagine how Zeus reacted. The king of the gods betrayed by a mortal. Not just any mortal, but one who dared to expose his secret affairs. Zeus's fury shook the heavens. To make an example out of him, Zeus ordered Thanatos, the god of death, to drag Sisyphus down to the underworld and chain him there forever. But if you've learned anything about Sisyphus by now, it's that he never goes quietly. When Thanatos arrived, Sisyphus greeted him with false humility. "Before you chain me," he said smoothly, "show me how these chains work. I wouldn't want to resist the gods incorrectly." Thanatos, perhaps too confident himself, demonstrated the mechanism. And in an instant, Sisyphus flipped the trick, chaining death instead. Thanatos struggled, cursed, but it was too late. Death was bound, and the world above was thrown into chaos. No one could die. Soldiers stabbed each other on battlefields and kept fighting. Old men gasped for breath but couldn't pass away. Even the gods started to panic, especially Ares, the god of war. Without death, battles were meaningless. So Ares stormed into the mortal realm, broke the chains, and freed Thanatos. And Sisyphus? His time had run out. Before facing his punishment, Sisyphus still had one trick left. He turned to his wife Merope and said, "When I die, don't bury me. Throw my body into the town square." Merope, confused but obedient, did as he asked. When Sisyphus reached the underworld, he played the victim. He approached Persephone, queen of the dead, with a pained expression. "My queen," he pleaded, "my wife has dishonored me. She left my body unburied, exposed to the world. Let me return just for a few days to punish her and ensure I receive a proper burial." Persephone, sympathetic to his grief, agreed. And so, once again, Sisyphus escaped death, walking back into the sunlight, breathing the fresh air, laughing at how easily he had fooled the rulers of life and death. But, of course, he never went back. Days turned to weeks, weeks to years. He lived, ruled, and grew old, defying the gods with every heartbeat. Eventually, the gods had enough. Hermes, the swift messenger, was sent to drag Sisyphus back to the underworld. No more games, no more tricks. And this time, the punishment would fit the crime. Sisyphus had thought himself clever enough to outsmart death itself, so Zeus devised a punishment that mocked that arrogance, one that was impossible to cheat. Deep in the gloom of Hades, Sisyphus stood before a massive, jagged boulder. It loomed taller than any man, rough and heavy enough to crush mountains. Zeus's voice echoed through the cavern. You love to outsmart others, to defy what cannot be defied? So here is your task. Roll this stone to the top of that hill, and when it falls, do it again. For eternity. And so began the endless cycle. Sisyphus strained against the stone, muscles trembling, dust rising from the ground. Inch by inch, he pushed it upward, sweat poured down his face. His hands bled. Every time the top was within reach, every single time the boulder slipped, rolled down, and thundered back to the bottom. He screamed, cursed the gods, and began again. Days became decades. Decades became eternity. No matter how many times he climbed, the result was always the same: failure, repetition, and despair. But somewhere in that endless loop, something changed. Centuries later, French philosopher Albert Camus revisited this myth in his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. He imagined Sisyphus not as a broken man, but as a symbol of humanity itself, endlessly struggling, endlessly hoping. Camus wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Centuries later, French philosopher Albert Camus revisited this myth in his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. He imagined Sisyphus not as a broken man, but as a symbol of humanity itself, endlessly struggling, endlessly hoping. Camus wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Maybe, like Sisyphus, we find meaning not in the outcome, but in the act itself, the choice to keep going even when it seems absurd. Because the moment Sisyphus turns back down that hill, knowing what awaits him and still deciding to start again, he wins. He becomes something even the gods can't control, a man who accepts his fate and finds strength within it. The myth of Sisyphus isn't just an old Greek tale, it's a mirror. It reflects our daily grind, our frustrations, our resilience. When you're stuck in traffic for the 100th time, when your hard work goes unnoticed, when you fail again and again but keep trying, that's the spirit of Sisyphus living inside us. He represents the unbreakable part of the human soul, the part that refuses to quit, even when the universe laughs. And maybe that's why his story has lasted thousands of years. Because deep down, we all know what it feels like to push a rock uphill. Sisyphus thought he could outsmart death. He believed intelligence could make him untouchable. But in the end, his punishment became a reflection of his pride. He didn't just defy the gods, he defied the natural order, the cycle of life and death itself. And yet, in his eternal punishment, there's a strange sort of redemption. He learns endurance, persistence, acceptance. The gods gave him endless labor, but they couldn't take away his mind's awareness, his defiance, his ability to find meaning even in suffering, and that's what makes him unforgettable. Sisyphus may be trapped forever, but his spirit, his unbroken will, became a symbol that no god could destroy. So, the next time you feel like your efforts are meaningless, remember Sisyphus. Remember the man who outsmarted death twice, defied the gods, and still found purpose in an endless climb. He's not just a figure from mythology. He's the story of us all struggling, failing, starting again, and somehow finding beauty in the struggle. Because maybe happiness isn't reaching the top of the hill, maybe happiness is just pushing the rock. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button to help more people discover the hidden power of ancient myths. Tell me in the comments, what's your boulder? What's the challenge you keep pushing every day? And of course, subscribe for more legendary stories about gods, monsters, and the timeless lessons they still teach us today.